Good evening, everyone. Welcome to SRP Night. My name is Hannah Young, and today I'm going to present to you the effect of LED color on sweet basil. So a little bit about me. I go to Magna Vista High School, and in the fall, I plan to attend William & Mary, where I'm going to major in accounting. I chose this topic because my mom was really into horticulture when she was in high school, and because of this, we always have a home garden every spring, even if sometimes the plants always die. This can also affect commercial greenhouses because it can optimize their plant growth and their profits. So to begin, plants use light in photosynthesis to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. A plant's daily light integral, or their DLI, is their photosynthetic rate they have per day. A 2018 study found that shaded tomato plants had a decreased DLI. With additional supplementary light, their DLI was able to increase the rates above the original. Additionally, a plant's photoperiod is the amount of light they receive per day. With an increased photoperiod, a plant has increased DLI and has more has a higher photosynthetic rate. LEDs have been found as an optimal source for supplementary lighting because they convert an electrical current into light energy in a very compact manner. Previously, high-pressure sodium lamps have been used as the primary source for lighting in a commercial greenhouse, but a 2022 study found that on wheat, oat, and barley, HPS lamps were actually less energy efficient than LEDs. And this can be applied to those commercial greenhouses because to run an 800 square foot greenhouse, it costs about $200,000 a month. So to be able to decrease these costs with cheaper lights that are also able to be more energy efficient, this can help optimize their profits. So plants have pigments called chlorophyll that absorb light to be stored to be used in photosynthesis. There are two types, chlorophyll A and B, and both of these absorb red and blue wavelengths. Because they both absorb these colors, red and blue supplementary lights have been used as an option so that they are able to absorb more light. A 2018 study treated purple foxglove and found that a combination of red 8, blue 2, so a higher red intensity, was able to increase the plant growth of these compared to other combinations and to a control. The plant I chose to focus on was basil, which is a well-known herb that also has many medicinal properties. A 2020 study found that with the ethanol and hexane extracts of basil, it had various phytochemicals such as tannins, flavonoids, and phenols, which are all anti-inflammatories and antibacterials. Because of these important properties, many studies have been done on basil. One such study found that a combination of red 85, blue 15, so again a higher red intensity, increased the plant growth of basil the most, and another found that just additional supplementary light increased the phytochemicals in basil. All of this information led me to my personal research topic, which was, does lighting color improve the plant growth of sweet basil? To begin my study, I gathered all of my materials. This included Glee potting soil, a 4-inch nursery potting plant, Osmum basilicum seeds or sweet basil seeds, and a red and a blue LED light. To begin, I planted my seeds. So in each pot, I used 1.5 cups of soil, and I planted 3 seeds in a triangular shape with a thin layer of soil on top of it, and I then watered this with a 1/2 cup of water. I repeated this process 90 times and labeled each pot 1 through 90. To randomize them, I used a simple random sample to assign 30 of these pots to each treatment, those treatments being the control, the red LED, and the blue LED. Once this was finished, I placed all of these lights into their light treatments. They were all placed along the same wall of a sunroom, and each light was hung 50 centimeters above the plants. A black trash bag was hung between the light treatments, as you can see, to minimize the amount of the mixture of light. These lights were placed on a timer to turn on at 11 a.m. and turn off at 11 p.m. After this was done, I let them grow, and every other day I watered them with 1/4 cup of water. After 40 days, I measured each plant. So on a piece of paper, I recorded the pot number, the number of plants in each pot, and the height and diameter in millimeters for each of the plants. Once I put this into an Excel spreadsheet, I was able to find those averages and put them on this graph. And as you can see, it appears that the blue LED has the highest height, and the red LED has the highest diameter. Now to see whether this was statistically significant, I ran a 2-way ANOVA test. I ran this test because I had 3 groups that I was comparing the averages of, and I had 2 different variables that I was looking at. All of my conditions checked out for this test, those being random, normal, independent, and my variances were similar. And I ran the 3 parts of this test at a 95% confidence level with a 0.05 significance level or alpha level. And all of that basically just means that I'm going to be 95% confident in my results, and I have a 5% chance of a type 1 error or a false positive. The first part of this test looks at a comparison of the growth under the light treatments. The null hypothesis, which is what we assume to be true, is that the average growth under the control, the red, and the blue LED were all the same. And the alternative hypothesis, which is what I'm trying to prove, was that all of those values were different. test was an F, and this shows the amount of variability between the means. The test statistic I got was 17.113, which is a relatively high number, meaning there was a lot of variability supporting my alternative hypothesis. I then computed a p-value, and the one I got was basically 0. This means that if my null hypothesis was true, so for this specific case, if the average growth under the control, the red and the blue, were all the same, I would have a 0% chance of getting these results by random chance alone. When this p-value was compared to my alpha level at 0.05, it was less than that value, so I was able to reject my null hypothesis. This meaning I had enough evidence at my significance level of 0.05 to conclude that the average growth under each light treatment was different. The second part looks at a comparison of the height and diameter. The null hypothesis states that the average height and the average diameter were the same, and the alternative hypothesis states that those averages were different. I computed a test statistic of 200.58, which is again a relatively large number, meaning there was a lot of variability, and I got a p-value of basically 0. When this p-value was compared to my alpha level at 0.05, it was less than that, so I was able to reject my null hypothesis, meaning that I had enough evidence to conclude that there was a difference in the average height and the average diameter for my data set. The last part looks at a comparison of the two previously stated tests and looks at an interaction between the two. The null hypothesis states that there was not an interaction between plant growth and light treatment. The alternative hypothesis, again what I'm trying to prove, is that there was an interaction between the amount of growth that that plant had and the light treatment that it was under. The test statistic I computed was 21.429, which is again a big number and a lot of variability, and the p-value I got was basically 0. When this p-value was compared to my alpha level at 0.05, it was less than that, so I was able to reject my null hypothesis, meaning that I had enough evidence to conclude that there was an interaction between the light treatment the plant was under and the amount of growth that that plant had. So all of this math basically means that the LED did have an effect on the growth of the sweet basil. More specifically, the blue LED increased the height of the plant and the red LED increased the diameter of the plant. This is most likely due to the fact that the supplementary light increased the photoperiod of the plant. Additionally, because I used a red and a blue LED, the chlorophyll were able to absorb more light, meaning they had more light for photosynthesis, improving their growth rates. This can be applied to those commercial greenhouses because they can use a red light to increase the diameter and a blue light to increase the height depending on what they're looking for. And this will also improve the amount of growth that their plants have, giving them more profit and more plants to sell. This can also be applied on a more smaller level to smaller greenhouses and stores like Lowe's and Home Depot that could also benefit from having their plants grow more and have more profits. My study did have some limitations. One of those included the season. I did grow my plants during the winter when they're primarily grown in the spring. If I had grown them in the spring, they could have been grown outside and had more sunlight and heat, meaning that there could have been a potential difference in the amount that the plant grew. Additionally, I was working on a time constraint. I only allotted 40 days to grow my plants, and if I had allowed them to grow to maturity, they could have again shown a difference in the final height and diameter values that I got, changing the results of this study. Future researchers can fix these limitations and also look at different light combinations by potentially looking at combining a red and a blue LED to get an optimal growth of a plant, and also looking at different colors such as purple, yellow, or green to see if those have another effect. Future researchers can also look at other crops such as tomatoes, lettuce, or cucumbers and see whether the results that happened in my study can be applied across the range with different plants. So finally, I would like to thank everybody who helped me with my study. I'd like to thank Ms. Spencer for helping me with the research portion, Ms. Harrell for helping me with the math, my grandma for letting me grow 90 plants in her sunroom over the winter, and the judges and audience for being here today. I will now take questions from the judges.
So why did you choose that specific photo period? Why didn't you go longer or shorter?
So in my research, I actually found one study compared different photo periods. So they looked at like a 12-hour photo period, a 16-hour, and an 18-hour. And they found that once you got to a 12-hour photo period, it actually stopped helping the growth, and it really didn't improve it anymore. So I figured if I did 12 hours, it would cost me a little bit less on my light bill and also would just show the most improvement.
And you talked about growing your plants indoors in the winter time. If I was trying to do that, what would the difference in cost efficiency be between using just these kind of bulbs that you had or using, heat lamps or colored heat lamps?
So I'm not sure of the specific value of cost efficiency, but I know that, like I stated, HPS lamps, they use heat, so they cost more to run. And since the LEDs cost a little bit less, they're cheaper to make, and they're more energy efficient, so they won't cost as much on your light bill. You would definitely save money using an LED compared to an HPS or other type of light.
Do you think LEDs that people put under their TVs, under their bed, or on the top of their roof would make any difference?
So actually in this study, I did use just a normal red and blue LED light bulb, like they could have been used in a lamp. Now I do know, like specifically at Walmart, they do have like plant LEDs they have red and blue LEDs and they're made for plants. I'm not sure what the actual difference is between those, but I do think it really just matters that it's a red and a blue wavelength. It doesn't really matter what type of LED it is.
Thank you, Hannah.
Hello, my name is Helena Wright, and I did my study on rural versus urban botanical garden soil plots. Hypothetical botanical garden. A little bit about me. I go to Magna Vista High School. When I graduate, I plan to attend Patrick and Henry Community College and major in nutrition. I chose this topic because the only tourism spot we have in Henry County is the raceway. And we know when racetrack traffic comes, we can't get anywhere, and most of the businesses shut down. I think a botanical garden could really give us more tourism, maybe not as much as the race traffic does, but hopefully a little more than we do now. I also really do prefer to be outside. I love to go hiking as well as take my dog with me when I can, also occasionally golfing. Plants and pollinators are also very important to our environment. Without pollinators, we wouldn't have these plants that we eat every day, not only for home gardens, but also for the wildlife that surrounds us. To start with botanical gardens, they started in the Middle Ages. They started as medicinal gardens. They started growing rose and lavender for things like headaches, as well as chamomile and mint for people with stomach aches. They didn't have the antibodies that we have today, so this was kind of like their pharmacy. This is where they would go to get their drugs. They also served as centers of happiness. They started during the war, so people would be either going to war, coming back from war, or they would just be going through life tribulations of their own. This is a place where they could go and decompress and just stay where they were and just really have a moment to just stay there. Without pollinators, we would also have a 90% decline in fertility due to a study by Rom. Without pollinators, we wouldn't have all the plants that we have today, and we wouldn't have all these pretty flowers that are blooming now. All the plants would soon die away, and we wouldn't have as much wildlife. They also benefit the ecosystem because wildlife needs to eat them, as well as us. We not only benefit from these plants, but also the wildlife. They also have tons of positive impacts. A study done by Rom showed that two cousins, before, during, and after they went to a botanical garden, before they went to the botanical garden, they weren't very interested in the topic at all. They didn't care how these plants benefited us, and they just really wanted to go outside and play. While they were at the botanical garden, they were the first people to grab a worksheet. The worksheet detailed plants that they had to go find, as well as how they benefited us and the environment. They were really upset when they had to leave, and when they came back, the learning didn't stop there. They asked their teacher continually about how these plants, and they'd bring things up at recess and ask them how it benefited us and what it did for the environment. Not only education, but it also benefits jobs and opportunities. We know we don't have a lot of jobs here, but these could bring jobs for architectures, gardeners, and even just many jobs that we really need. I focus on 4 main nutrients in this study. I started with nitrogen. Nitrogen aids in the production of chlorophyll in plants. Chlorophyll helps the plant make food and digest the food it makes. I also focus on phosphorus. Phosphorus aids in cell division. It helps a little sapling get from the top of the soil all the way up, and it doesn't only stop there. As the plant gets taller and taller, the cells are dividing within it, which is aided by the phosphorus. Also focus on pH. pH is the measurement of hydrogen ions in plants, as well as how much nutrients is available to the plant at the time. Lastly, I focus on potassium. Now, potassium helps plants during drought season. It helps aid in water loss, so make sure the plant keeps all the water that it retains. It also is nicknamed the quality nutrient. The quality nutrient just really signifies the size, color, and variance in the plant. So would you pick the ugly squash or the pretty squash? You pick the pretty one, and that's because of potassium. Lastly, urbanization. There's been over a 400% increase in urbanization due to a study by Cavender. This causes environmental degradation. This can be caused by sound pollution, noise pollution, chemical runoff, and even air pollution. As we know, in urban cities, there are a lot of buildings going around, as well as a lot of factories running. Of course, they have to dump their chemicals somewhere, and then all question, would a botanical garden do better in a rural or urban soil plot? For my method, I collected soil at the Smith River Sports Complex, which was my rural, and Chick-fil-A, which was my urban of the area. I took pH tests from a rapid soil testing kit. In the pH test, they were all coded green. There was a soil fill line, and I filled the soil to there, as well as water to the water fill line. I then added these green capsules, which came with the testing kit. I added those in, shook it up, and let it sit for 2 minutes, and then I recorded all of the colors into an Excel spreadsheet. Now for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, I had to do a 5-to-1 ratio. That was 5 parts water to 1 part soil. I had to shake that solution up and let it sit overnight. And then from the rapid soil testing kit, purple being nitrogen, phosphorus being blue, nitrogen being orange, I had to take only the water solution from the solution I let sit overnight and add it to the testing kit. I then added the color-coordinated capsules to these testing kits and shook it up and let it sit for 10 minutes. I then recorded all of those results into an Excel spreadsheet. I ran a 2-proportion z-test. A 2-proportion z-test compares 2 proportions to one another to see if they are equal or unequal. For my null hypothesis, which is what I'm trying to disprove, is the proportion of adequate levels in the Smith River Sports Complex is less than or equal to the proportion of adequate levels at Chick-fil-A. My alternative hypothesis, which is what I think is going to be true, is the proportion of adequate levels at the Smith River Sports Complex is greater than or equal to the proportion of adequate levels at Chick-fil-A. I, of course, ran this at an alpha level of 0.05, which is a 95% confidence level and a 5% chance I would incorrectly reject the null hypothesis when it was true. I started with pH levels. I only graphed the adequate levels for Chick-fil-A in the Smith River Sports Complex. Since it didn't divide it by inadequate and adequate on the soil tests, I did it by hand. I did 6.5 to 7.5 was adequate levels. Anything above or below was inadequate, which wasn't graphed at all. I got a p-value of 0.99, which just means I have a 99% chance of getting these results again by random chance alone, as well as a z-value of negative 5.6. Now this is below 0, which means my value is inadequate and I really can't prove that I can reject the null hypothesis, therefore I fail to reject. This just means that the Smith River Sports Complex has less adequate soil for pH than Chick-fil-A. For potassium levels, I again only graphed the adequate levels. These, however, came graphed on the actual test, that inadequate and adequate levels. So I only graphed the adequate. I got a p-value of 0.002, which just means I have a 0.2% chance of getting these results again by random chance alone. My z-value was above 0 this time, so I do have enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis. Therefore, I can say that potassium levels are higher at Smith River Sports Complex than they are at Chick-fil-A. Again, for nitrogen, I got a p-value of 0.5%. This just means that's how much I have to get these results again by random chance alone. My z-value is 2.58, which is above 0, which means that I can reject the null hypothesis and say that nitrogen levels are higher at the Smith River Sports Complex than they are at Chick-fil-A. Lastly, for phosphorus, I again only graphed the adequate levels. I got a 99% chance of getting these results again by random chance alone, as well as a z-value of negative 5.6, which is below 0, which means that I fail to reject the null hypothesis, and I cannot prove that the Smith River Sports Complex has more adequate levels of phosphorus than Chick-fil-A. For my results, I got 2 reject the null hypothesis and 2 fail to reject the null hypothesis. This all just means I fail to reject the null hypothesis because at the beginning the null hypothesis has an equal sign under it, where the alternative hypothesis did not. This all means that urban versus rural soil plots doesn't make a difference in Martinsville, Henry County. I couldn't really prove that one was better than the other. This means that a botanical garden in Martinsville could go anywhere. It could go in our urban parts of town, and it could go in our rural parts of town. This just means it can really reach anybody anywhere, as well as I couldn't significantly signify which nutrients were better and which nutrients were worse in either soil plots because they ended up being equal, and plants need all the nutrients to survive. They can't just survive off of one, so they all really do matter. For my limitations, I did have a limitation in sample and population size. I only tested one place for urban and one place for rural, when if I really wanted to get more statistically significant results, I should have tested more urban places and more rural places. My accuracy was also a little off for the rapid soil test. Sometimes I would add the pill capsule first and then the water, or sometimes I'd add the water then the pill capsule. conduct way more tests. I'd like to give a special thank you to Ms. Spencer for helping me with this project, Ms. Young and Ms. Whitaker for helping me with the math, as well as the judges and audience for coming and listening.
So do you think that, you said that your urban collection spot was Chick-fil-A. Do you think the fact that Chick-fil-A probably pays a landscaper could have affected like the soil quality because the landscapers might use some kind of fertilizer or things like that?
I definitely think so, but I also chose it because it was so close to the road and people go past it every day, and I think it's a very highly trafficked spot, especially now that we've added a Starbucks next to it.
Harvest Foundation is giving you unlimited money to build a community garden. Where would you put it?
I would put it near the Smith River Sports Complex. One, because I want people to get outside more. As we know, we need more people to get outside. And they already have a pollinator path, however, it's only for if you have a dog. So I feel like since they already have that, we could kind of morph it into a botanical garden, but it could be accessed for people without the dogs.
And how do you think a botanical garden would benefit Martinsville, Henry County?
I think it would give us a place to go on field trips for the kids, children especially, to learn about plants, as well as bring teenagers back to the environment and help them learn really what these plants do for us and why they're so cool.
Thank you, Elena. Next up, we have Paris.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paris Full, and for my senior research project, I chose to do small business advertising. So a little bit about me. I attend Martinsville High School, and while I'm currently undecided on where I want to go to college, I do know that I would like to study psychology. So I chose this topic because I feel that small businesses have a major impact on our community, and they bring people together that you wouldn't normally see on your day-to-day basis. Also because my grandfather owns his own small business, so hopefully this could help him out a little bit. So marketing is the process of meeting the demands of consumers. And a study done by Santiago actually says that integrated marketing communications, which is combining all the forms of communications with customers, is the most efficient form of advertising for small businesses. Also, when you are marketing, you want to make sure that you are being inclusive because a study done by Grau says that non-stereotypical ads are seen by consumers as positive. So there are two types of advertising. You have in-person advertising and in-person advertising and online advertising. And some outdoor examples of in-person advertising would be billboards, stand-up signs, electronic signs, and advertisements on buses or taxis. And some paper examples of that would be brochures, pamphlets, business cards, and posters. And some benefits of in-person advertising would be the economy, amenities, safety, charities, and of course, small businesses. And some examples of online advertising would be pop-up ads, social media pages, and websites. Though there are some areas of improvement for small businesses to make regarding online advertising, a study done by Palacios says that 3 things that they could improve on would be financial management, digital presence, and promoting business knowledge. Digital coupons are also a very important part of online advertising because small businesses could always send the coupons through email or text messages to their regular customers. They could also use apps such as Groupon or Honey. And there's some disadvantages that could deter small businesses from using online advertising, such as privacy concerns, malware, scamming, or viruses. Some examples of social media would be Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And customer interaction, which is the amount of customers that will view a business's page, is a very important part of social media and websites, just online advertising in general, because you want to make sure that you do have enough customer interaction so you can make profit and gain more customers. And a study done by Bowling says that small business websites get the least amount of customer interaction. And a study done by Zoo says that if you want to make a social media post, you want to make sure that it's considered good. And 3 things to look at would be aesthetics, messaging, and call to action. And influencers are a good way that small businesses could promote their products or business by reaching out to said influencers and exchanging a free product for a post about their business or product. So all of this leads me to my research question: is online or paper advertising more efficient for small businesses? The materials that I used for my study would be a printer, the Canva app, and of course my small business, which is Delicious Frozen Yogurt in Danville, Virginia. The first thing I did was created the coupons through the Canva app, and I used a different code for both the online coupons and the paper coupons. For the online coupons, I used the code CHERRY, and for the paper coupons, I used the code SWEET, so customers could easily remember the code if they forgot to screenshot it or take a picture. Other than that, I used the same style, imagery, and discount for all of the coupons, as you can see in the picture there. I then printed an 8x10 poster for the paper coupons, and I posted those in the Danville, Virginia area, in populated areas such as Target, the Danville Mall, and I also handed them out to people I saw in both areas. As you can see in the pictures there, I am putting up the coupons. I then posted the online coupon on Delicious' Instagram page, and then I waited 5 days while the manager of Delicious recorded how many people brought in online coupons, paper coupons, as well as no coupon, which gave me my sample size of 429, and I plugged that data into an Excel spreadsheet. So my null hypothesis for my study, which is what I am trying to prove as well as the initial claim, is that there is not a preference in the type of coupon used, whereas the alternate hypothesis, which is what I am trying to prove, is that there is a preference in the type of coupon used. And I ran my test using an alpha level of 0.05, meaning that I am 95% confident in my results, but I do have a 5% chance of making an error. So as you can see in the chart there, I have my observed data, which is the collected data that I got from the manager of Delicious. And then I have my expected counts, which they are all the same because I did not expect there to be a difference in online, paper, or no coupon. And then here I'm just showing a graph of the difference between the expected and observed counts. And as you can see, no coupon is significantly greater than what was supposed to be expected, whereas online and paper coupon were significantly lower than what was supposed to be expected. So I decided to run a chi-square goodness of fit test to compare the expected and observed counts. And I used a degrees of freedom of 2, meaning that that is how many independent values I have in my study. And my chi-square statistic came out to be 682.32, which is very large, so we can assume that there is a very large difference in the expected and observed counts. And then I have my p-value of 0, which is the probability of my results being just based on random chance alone. And since my p-value is lower than my alpha level of 0.05, I can go ahead and reject the null hypothesis because I do have significant evidence at that 0.05 level of significance to conclude that there is a preference in the type of coupon used. So if we look back on my results, you can tell that there was many people not using coupons, and this could be because I wasn't reaching enough people, many people weren't seeing the coupons that I had put out. But if we compare paper and the online coupons, we can see that online coupons did have more people, and this could be because of the online usage nowadays. Many people are using social media, and businesses are now using online advertising more. I believe that my study is important because we can help future businesses decide which type of advertising would be beneficial to them. Also, we could bring to light some more better advertising methods that small businesses could use. Also, just make coupons more accessible in general. As you could tell, not many people were using coupons, so hopefully this could, influence people to use coupons. Though I did have some limitations in my study, such as the location, I did my study in a relatively small town, so I feel that future researchers could perform this study in a larger city or just in multiple areas to get a bigger sample size. Also, regarding my sample size, it was limited due to the fact that not many people brought in paper or online coupons, so future researchers could distribute more coupons so that more people could see it and bring it in. So I would like to thank Delishi Frozen Yogurt for allowing me to use their business in my study. I'd like to thank my teachers, Ms. Spencer, for helping me with my research project overall, and Mrs. Harrell for helping me with my math. And finally, I'd like to thank the judges and listeners for being here today. I will now take questions from the judges.
Do you think the time of year in which you conducted this study had any impact on your results? So in other words, had you done this study, say, closer to springtime or summertime, do you think the results would have been different?
I think it's possible, but I did do this study in the wintertime, so possibly a lot of people weren't out as much, but I believe it wasn't a great difference because these are populated areas that I did conduct the study in, so there are people going in and out of Target or the mall at all times.
Do you think that businesses spending money on online ads or a billboard or any kind of local marketing is worth it in a small area such as this, or would businesses be better off to spend that money on their customer experience and grow organically?
I think that here in general, that it's very good for small businesses or just businesses in general to use social media, because while there is not many, how do I put this? There's more of the older generation in our town than there is of people my age, teenagers. So I do think that while that is the case, that social media or just websites in general are more effective for small businesses to use, because if you take, for example, the ground floor, they're uptown and not many people go uptown on a day-to-day basis, so I think it's good that they use, social media like Instagram.
You had mentioned in your presentation to make the coupons more accessible to people. What are some ways you can make it more accessible online?
I think probably the businesses, like small businesses in general, to use the apps like Groupon and Honey more often. Also, many people don't know about those apps, so I think they should definitely do that, or just in general, like make a social media page if they don't already and put the coupons on there so that they are more accessible to people.
Thank you, Karen. Next up, we have Nolan.
is Nolan Paparovich, and I chose to conduct my research study on the scalability of paper airplanes. I'm currently a senior at Bassett High School, and in the fall I plan to attend Virginia Tech to pursue a career in engineering. I chose this project both because of my interest in engineering and because I was interested in learning more about certain flight systems and how they function. Also, this was a non-human study, which was ideal to me. Before I talk about paper airplanes, I first wanted to cover a topic known as biomechanics. Biomechanics is the process of studying organic systems from the context of physics and can help provide us with new approaches to man-made flight solutions. One particular branch of biomechanics is known as wing analyses. Wing analyses involve investigating the wings of small animals and insects in order to determine how they function. For example, one study conducted in 2018 by UPU sought to investigate the corrugated airfoils of dragonflies and found them to be more effective at small scales than man-made solutions. Another way to study basic flight functions without the need to gather living organisms is through paper airplanes. The first paper airplane was folded in the 1800s by Sir George Cayley. However, they were not used from a scientific perspective until World War II, when they were used as models to test prototype aircraft. Since then, they have grown greatly in popularity, and today they have a wide community of hobbyists and world record holders behind them. Some practical uses of paper airplanes include, first and foremost, in the classroom, where, according to world record holder John Collins, these paper airplanes have a variety of developmental benefits, such as improvements to muscle coordination, 3D visualization, and direction following. Additionally, paper airplanes are extremely applicable to MAV, or micro air vehicle research. MAVs, according to OMCAR, are small, unmanned aerial vehicles that travel at about 10 to 20 meters per second. MAVs have a variety of applications, from firefighting to filmmaking to policing to surveying to delivery and more. One way to study MAVs, paper airplanes, and flight systems in general is through numerical analyses. Numerical analyses involve employing mathematical algorithms and computer simulations in order to virtually predict how certain flight systems will perform without the need to physically test them. For example, a study conducted in 2021 by UTHRAB sought to investigate the appearance of laminar separation bubbles, or LABs, in different airfoil designs, and discovered that these vortices appeared more frequently under certain design configurations. Some experiments have also been conducted on paper airplanes specifically, including algorithmic optimizations, which utilized numerical analyses and other algorithms to optimize the performance of paper airplanes and their flight paths. A study conducted in 2020 did just that and was successful in optimizing the paper airplane and its flight efficiency. Additionally, a study conducted in 2023 by Obayashi investigated an automated approach to launching and optimizing paper airplanes, and was successfully able to build a robot that was capable of automatically changing the flight paths of paper airplanes to be more efficient. All this research led me to my own research question, which was how do changes in a paper airplane's size affect its flight efficiency, as although these previous research articles investigated the designs of paper airplanes, I saw few which exactly detailed how changes in scale affected these designs. I started by gathering a handful of materials and tools for my experiment, including poster boards, a cutting knife to cut the poster boards, and a measuring tool in order to ensure that my cuts and folds were precise and accurate. I then assembled the paper airplanes over the course of several days, starting by measuring the papers into 3 separate sizes, which were the standard paper sizes of A3, A4, and A5 paper, and I labeled them size 3, size 2, and size 1, respectively, with size 3 being the largest. I then cut and folded these paper airplanes, and I ended up with 90 paper airplanes total, or 30 of each size. I conducted my experiment on a clear, windless afternoon over the course of several hours. The equipment I used was my iPad to record the data, my phone to record the flight times of the paper airplanes, and my calculator to randomly assign the order in which I launched the paper airplanes. I conducted the experiment over several hours, and I hand threw the paper airplanes. I threw all 90 paper airplanes, and I took a 1-hour break every 30 throws to ensure that my throwing arm did not get tired. I recorded all the data in an Apple number spreadsheet and organized it both based on the session and time, or the session and the the size. On the left, we can see my raw data in seconds, organized by the size group. On the right, we can see my descriptive statistics, which detail both the variances and the means of my data. The variances, shown on the bottom, represented by the S, indicate how much the data varied within each size group. As we can see, all of these variances are relatively similar, indicating that my flight times varied consistently across the entire experiment. On the top, we can see the means, or the averages in seconds of my flight times, represented by the X bar. As we can see, the mean flight time appears to increase alongside the scale of the paper airplanes, indicating that larger paper airplanes do lead to longer flight times. However, in order to verify this assumption, I needed to conduct a statistical analysis. The first step of the statistical analysis involved forming my hypothesis. My null hypothesis, or what I am assuming to be true without my experiment, is that all paper airplanes perform equally well regardless of their size. My alternative hypothesis, or what my experiment is attempting to test, is that at least one of the mean flight times differed from the rest. To evaluate these hypotheses, I needed to conduct a one-way ANOVA test. The purpose of the one-way ANOVA test is to verify if at least one of the means are statistically different from the rest. The conditions for my ANOVA test all checked out, and I ended up with the following result: a p-value of 0.005 and an f-value, or test statistic, of 5.617. The p-value indicates that, assuming that all paper airplanes performed equally well regardless of their size, there is a 0.5% chance of receiving the data that I observed. My f-value, or my test statistic, indicates how much the different means differed from one another. Had the means been more similar, we would have expected an f-value closer to 1. Because my p-value was less than my 0.05 level of significance, I was able to successfully reject my null hypothesis and conclude with 95% confidence that paper airplane size does affect the flight time. Because I rejected my null hypothesis, I needed to conduct a two-piece HSD test. The two-piece HSD test, or honestly significant difference test, is meant to determine where the difference lies following an ANOVA test. After running the HSD test, I received the following result: an HSD value of 0.121. I then compared the differences between all of the means in my descriptive statistics and ended up with the greatest difference lying between means 1 and 3. Combining this with the observations I made in my descriptive statistics, I was able to conclude that the paper airplane flight time did increase alongside the paper airplane size. To summarize, I was able to successfully conclude with 95% confidence that paper airplane scale does positively affect the flight times of the paper airplanes. This is applicable in a variety of different fields, mostly in the design of different aerial vehicles. And this was consistent with the other data I found in my other studies, which showed that larger airfoils did lead to longer flight times. My experiment did have a few limitations, first and foremost being the size range. I tested a relatively small range of sizes, and I cannot guarantee with 100% accuracy that the trend I found here applies to all possible sizes of paper airplanes. Future experiments should test more extreme sizes and maybe even different materials to see how this will affect the flight times. Additionally, I had limited control over my environment, as my paper airplanes were floated in an outdoor space where I had limited control over things like temperature and airflow direction and speed. Future studies should attempt to fly the paper airplanes in a more controlled space. Additionally, as I said, the paper airplanes were hand-thrown, which could have introduced unintended bias to my experiment. Future studies should follow up with methods such as the 2023 study conducted by Obayashi, which used a robot to launch paper airplanes instead of a human arm. I would like to thank Ms. Spencer for helping me put this entire project together, Ms. Whitaker and Ms. Harrell for helping me with the math sections of my SRP, and the judges and audience for being here today. I will now take questions.
How did you determine which design of paper airplane you would use?
So I actually looked at a bunch of different designs from a bunch of different studies I found, and originally I wanted to go with one that maximized flight distance, but I decided to go with the more common dart design, as that seemed to be the universal sort of the belief was universally held that that was one of the best performing paper airplanes all around, and that was also one of the more common paper airplanes designs.
Do you think that if you were to start at a much higher place to throw the airplane from, so they have more distance to travel, do you think that that would have increased the disparity between different sizes of airplane, or made it level out in the long run?
So one study I actually investigated grouped the different airplane flight patterns into different shapes. So there were arc flight patterns and different arcs, and there was some that dipped down and went back up again. And so I think that I definitely would have wanted to look into that and see exactly the pattern which the airplanes were launched and that they flew, or the pattern that the airplanes flew at. I think if I knew that, I could definitely make a better estimate on how drastic the difference might have been. But most of the airplanes seem to follow a simple kind of dive pattern, so I definitely think that the disparity could have been greater if launched from a higher altitude.
Applying your study to the real world, what suggestions would you make to Boeing based off of the study that you conducted?
Well, I just say that if you want a plane with more lift, you use bigger wings, pretty much, because my study basically concluded that larger airfoils led to higher lift and longer flight times. So definitely just larger planes, larger wings type situation.
Thank you, Helen.
We will now take a quick 5-minute break. Again, the bathrooms are just over here and just over here, and then we will come back in about 5 minutes.
She was back there. She's not in the seat anymore. Go to the bathroom?
let's go present.
Okay, if I can get everybody heading back to your seats, please. Next up, we have Tyra. Okay, here it is.
Good evening. I hope you all had a good recess, and I want to tell you about my SRP. I did my topic on what educate millennials on modern day math spike improvement. First, I want to start off with a little bit about me. Again, my name is Tyra. I attend Mooresville High School. I am a senior, and I plan to attend VCU in the fall. I will be attending the College of Humanities and Science and major in nursing. Okay, I see that you all, well, the judges are educational leaders, so you understand, and I see that you guys are parents to us, so y'all understand the confusion and the frustration it is when doing homework with your child. I also did this from personal experience. When I was in 3rd and 6th grade, and my mother had to help me with homework, it was not a fun time. I usually resulted in crying. So this also leads to me saying that this is not talked about often. It's mostly on hush-hush. Most parents, when they can't grasp the understanding, they will just resort to using the internet or just looking up the answer. And this could be beneficial for everyone, because everyone needs to understand the basis of math to continue with life, because math is used in everyday life. The first step to this problem is parental involvement and communication. Communication is the strongest method of understanding and comprehension, and I learned this from a study by Garbacus. This is also based on school-based relationships. This doesn't just have to be about your grades. This can be with the student's field trip or discipline issues. And quality time. You have to spend quality time with your child to put yourself into their shoes and to understand where they're coming from. I also read a study by Sheo that said you can do interactive mathematical activities, such as asking your child to set the table for dinner and asking them to count the plates to help them with their numerical values. Again, since you all are mostly educators, you know about the Virginia Department of Education, and you understand that math has evolved through time. The homework has also evolved as well. The homework has become more complex and more has been asked of a student than what it used to be. This also starts with the confusion with parents. For example, you can see that most students know the box method for multiplication. This is 2 by 2 digit. You separate it by place value. So 41 will be split into 40 and 1, and 35 will be split into 30 and 5. You then do 40 times 30, 1 times 30, 40 times 5, and 1 times 5, and you add all your answers to the side to get your final answer. The math standards have changed. This is also written in the curriculum of the Virginia Department of Education, but I wanted to mainly focus on 3rd through 6th grade because that's when you're transitioning and you start to get into more complex math. There's also a difference in the required material. You're asked of more and you're asked how to get different solutions during the process. For example, with fractions, we have an acronym called keep, change, flip. You keep the original fraction, you change it from division to multiplication, and you flip so your denominator is now on top of your numerator. Also, we use the number line now for integers. It's basically just a way to retrace your steps back from negative to positive. Most millennials did this stuff logically in their head. They didn't have to do this, but we require more hands-on learning. So this led me to my question, would implementing newer math for millennials improve their math skills? For my study, I first prepared a Google form, and I posted this form on Snapchat to get my participants. But also, the first thing in this Google form was a consent form. I basically stated to you that you could drop out at any time and that your results will be used for statistics reasons. This started off with your prior knowledge. It started off with a pre-quiz. I asked your age because I wanted to target millennials. And in this pre-quiz, you had math skills. It based on addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. These were of third through sixth grade questions and were on the Virginia Department of Education. After this instruction, you then did the post-quiz. This consisted of these same questions, but after you watched the videos, it was to instruct you to further answer the post-quiz questions. And then I got your data and put it in a Google form. You also had the option in the consent form to receive your answers, or if you didn't want them, I just used them for educational purposes. I then began to create my hypotheses. My first one is my initial, which is what I'm trying to disapprove, is my null hypothesis. This states that the mu, which is the mean difference of the post minus the pre-quiz scores are equal to 0, stating that there was no change. But my alternative hypothesis is what I want to prove is that there was a change, and that the post minus pre-score quizzes were better. I ran this at a significance level of 95%, and my alpha level was 0.05, which is the same thing, but the alpha is the symbol for significance. For my descriptive statistics, I got an X bar of 9.38. That explains to you how the bottom of my graph was distributed. The values at the bottom, as you see, they go from negative to 100. Negative means that there was no difference between the post and pre-scores, and the positive states that there were. I also got my standard deviation of 34.04. This also explains how my graph was partitioned, and as you see, the most of my data falls between the middle, between negative 25 and 0. That really states that there was no change in the post minus pre-scores. For my results, I ran a parent t-test. I did this because my data came from the same group, even though there were 2 different quizzes. I got a t-value of 1.55. That was my test statistic, and this states that how far that my data fell from the mean. And my p-value is 0.06. This means that if I were to do this again, I would have a 6% chance of getting these results by random choice alone. For my results, I did fail to reject my null hypothesis. I did this because my p-value was greater than my alpha level, so I didn't have any evidence to show that I could reject it. That leads me to say that this is not statistically significant. And I also had a confidence interval. This is a separate test, but I ran it just to make sure that I was completely wrong, which I was, because 0 is within this interval. And if you remember, my null hypothesis states I want it to equal 0, but that's the hypothesis that I don't want to run. For my analysis, looking back over, I realized that there was no drastic difference between the scores. And I sort of thought that there would be based on previous research of articles and the Department of Education, the Virginia Department of Education. But this also leads me to believe that you would need further instruction. You would need a classroom setting, not really doing it through Zoom or something, because we all know how that was during quarantine for students to pass. For my limitations, I had a small population size. I only had about 30 participants. My population was not representative of the whole United States. It was just based on Morrisville and Henry County and where the participants lived on Snapchat. My target audience, I wanted to target millennials in specific because they witnessed the most changes throughout their life. Calculators for AI, I didn't have a set specific rule on if you could use a calculator or if you could use AI. And time constraints, I do work a job and I work between 10 hours during the week, so I did not have much time to execute this properly as I should have. The improvement for the future experience, you should at least have a minimum of 100 participants. This is so you don't have any bias in your data. Their population should be more representative of the United States. You should get out of Morris-Wood-Henry County and try to get more participants. It should be access to all. Anybody should be able to take your quizzes, because this could, again, help all generations, everybody better their mathematical skills. And you should set specific rules and guidelines. You should state that you don't want any calculators or AI so you get your true data. And time management. I hope everybody has better time management than I do, because I don't have a great one, but if you do, you should be able to execute this properly. I want to say thank you to my mom, to Lynn Valentine. She helped me throughout this whole process to stay motivated. Miss Spencer, she's pretty cool. She helped me all the way. We argue, but she helped me a lot. Nadia Patel, she helped me thoroughly understand the math board. Ms. Cruz, she's the PTO volunteer leader at Patrick Henry Elementary School. She explained to me that this would be the best way to get my participants. Ms. Whitaker, thank you for teaching me my math and helping me as much as you could. My survey participants, the judges, and the audience. I want to thank you all for listening and coming, and I will now take questions from the judges.
So as the resident math teacher among the judges, I often struggle myself with new math, as you call it, because I learn a different way. So part of my job is figuring out every day, what's the best way to teach this material to people who might learn a little bit differently than me. So with that being said, do you use the box method for multiplying two-digit numbers?
I use the box method in every math equation that is multiplication. I'm in calculus right now. Ms. Whitaker, she can vouch for me. On the side of my papers, there be boxes with, yes, I definitely use the box method. I definitely think that it's efficient, and I think it's efficient for me because I'm a more hands-on learner. I need to visually see it. I can't do it in my head. I need to see it out on the paper. So I think that's why it's more effective, and that's why I like it.
Do you use the box method for factoring too?
I do, because the arrows and the foiling can get confusing. It might take longer, but I get there. I do.
Excellent.
You saw Snapchat for your participants. How do you think your study outcomes would have changed if you had done it in person as opposed to reaching your participants through social media?
I honestly think that I would have got a better outcome because I would be able to see the participants face to face, and I could probably explain more thoroughly what was in this consent form, what was on the pre-quiz. Because when most people hear math, they get scared. So I think that I would have a better understanding, and they could have a better understanding of what they're being asked to do.
And I'm gonna piggyback off of her question. You said you use Snapchat as your platform. Is there any reason you use Snapchat over Facebook if you're trying to reach millennials?
I personally don't know how to work Facebook. I know how to work Snapchat, so I posted my link on Snapchat. But I do think I would have got a better outcome on Facebook because most millennials use Facebook to communicate or to get help with things like that.
Thank you, Sarah. Next up, we have Kenza. any suggestions besides just restarting the projector, because it takes a while in here? All right, restart it is then. Extra break time. We practice doing it in charades. You can just act it out. Hooray! Okay, back to your seats, guys. Hooray! Take two. Microphone and paper.
Assessing microplastics through the impact of glitter on radish plants. Hi, my name is Kinza Yasser and I currently attend Magna Vista High School and am planning to attend VCU for pre-dental hygiene. I chose this project because I wanted to advocate for recycling and show the harmful effects of plastics on our environment. I also wanted to spread awareness about microplastics and show how big of a rising issue they are. Pollution is the unnatural disturbance of energy into the environment that degrades it from the natural state. Plastics are very durable, so they just break into smaller pieces instead of actually going anywhere. In a study conducted by Jong, it was found that plastics could be detected everywhere, all the way in your water and eyes. And it was found that they can be detected in the atmosphere all the way to your drinking water. Microplastics are small synthetic particles that are insoluble in water. They have a lot of toxic additives that are added into them to make them heat resistant and very durable. Now, in a study conducted by Pearl, it was found that depending on the size and concentration of the plastic, they could either mitigate the growth or actually they could amplify the growth by making larger pores in the soil so that water could flow faster. 39,000 to 52,000 microplastic particles are consumed annually by Americans, and 20% of the world's deaths are traced back to pollution-related health complications. Now, in a study conducted by Campbell, it was found that microplastic fibers will actually enter through the human airway and accumulate in the kidney and gut, and that the smaller microplastics will actually accumulate into your gastrointestinal tract. Now, this can cause a lot of damage to you and can cause a lot of additional health risks, because once they're ingested, they can cause nerve damage, and it was found that they can cause brain damage, which leads to high-fat obesity. Plants are key regulators of the ecosystem, and they provide food and nutrients for other organisms. When plants are exposed to plastics, it was found that it didn't have a significant effect on the germination stage, but that it somewhat affected the roots and the shoots of the plant. Now, in a study conducted by Tampa, it was found that they would accumulate in the plant root cells, and that in radish plants, it would accumulate into the xylem vessels where water and nutrients is transported. This cause the soil properties to change. This affects the microorganisms that live around the soil, and it has the potential to harm the other organisms that live in the soil that are important to the soil's composition. One of the reasons that plastics has such an effect on plants is because it can cause drought stress. Now within plants, it can cause their stunt in the growth and chlorophyll A content to decrease, but that there was a chance that it could increase protein and also nutrients. This is because it was found in a study by Eric that this is because the plants have a strong adaptive system where they can adapt to the drought stress, and it's found that radish plants actually will relocate the assimilates into the growing storage organs. This is important because there are many unsuspecting microplastics and pollutants in the world that we just don't think about. Like glitter is a primary microplastic that is often littered into the environment. It's everywhere. And I think that not a lot is done because people don't know what they can do or what they should do. Which is why I asked, will glitter impact the growth of radish plants? So for my experiment, I used plastic planting pots and soil and cherry bell radish seeds. Some of the measuring tools that I used was a scientific scale that was provided by the Piedmont Governor School. I also used measuring tape and a cup to measure my water. I had labeling supplies like sticky notes and clear duct tape so that I wouldn't get them mixed up. So first for my experiment, I measured out 4 cups of soil and put them into 40 pods. I then measured out 10 grams of glitter and put them out in 20 out of the 40 pods. I then mixed them up, and then I put cherry bell radish seeds in each of the 40 pods. They all received the same amount of sunlight and care. Now to collect my data, I used a measuring tape and I measured the stem length of each plant. So for my null hypothesis, which is what I assumed to be true, was that there was no significant difference between the two groups. And for my alternative hypothesis, which is what I'm trying to prove, or the change that I'm trying to show, is that there is a difference between the groups with either one of them amplifying or mitigating. This was set at an alpha level of 0.05 significance, and I was 95% confident in the accuracy of my results. So for my group with glitter added, it had a mean of 8.21 centimeters, which is the average growth that was observed, and a standard deviation of 3.412812, which is the dispersion of my growth values. And in my group with no glitter added, it had the same mean of 8.21, and it had a standard deviation of 1.309. Both groups were very similar. I conducted a 2-sample t-test to compare the means of my 2 groups. For my 95% confidence interval for the difference between the 2 groups, it was between negative 1.684 and positive 1.684. And since 0 was in my interval, it meant there was no significant difference. And for my p-value, I got 0.5, which is greater than what I had set, 0.05, which meant that I would reject my null hypothesis. Well, I would fail to reject my null hypothesis. So this meant that my results were statistically insignificant, and there was little to no difference between the 2 groups. This may have been caused by plant variability and external factors that I could not control, but the unimportantness or the non-effectiveness of glitter on radish plants, it contributes to the broader knowledge on microplastics and how they affect plants and our environment. Some of my limitations may have included overwatering, as only one of my plants out of all 40 grew this like gray ball of dust. It was like ash. I had no idea what this was. So I did some research and I found out this was probably due to overwatering. I still don't know really what it is, but it's probably from overwatering. And I also had a small sample size. Each group only had 20 in the groups. It would have been better Mrs. Whitaker for helping me all throughout my project, and I would like to thank the judges and audience for coming and listening to me. I will now take any questions.
Do you think that the choice of glitter had an impact? Because it looked like you used the real fine glitter, and some glitter has the the big chunks. Do you think that would have been had an impact if you would have chose the different type of glitter?
Yeah, 'cause in one of my studies, I found that depending on the size, some bigger chunks of glitter they can actually help the plant instead, and some farmers will actually use big pieces of plastic to help like the pores in the soil so that water can travel faster. I purposely tried to use fine glitter because I was trying to mimic microplastics and how they're very small.
How would what steps would you take to lessen the amount of microplastics you come across every day?
I would just be careful of what I encounter, and I also think in general as people we should probably to bigger companies advocate for ourselves that we want to use biodegradable things and biodegradable plastics. I think that instead of using plastic for glitter, we should probably use biodegradable glitters, and that'll probably lessen the health effects that it has on people. And there's no real way to escape microplastics. They'll be everywhere, and we probably consume like thousands today.
You used seeds for your research. In any of the previous research you did before you started this, were any research studies done using more mature plants?
Yeah, I actually came across a study. They let their plants grow a little bit into sprouts, and then they put the glitter in. I just didn't have time for that in my study.
Thank you, Kendall. Ready to go. Next up, we have Aaliyah.
Hello everybody, my name is Aaliyah Galloway, and I will be comparing the efficiencies of a roundabout versus an intersection. So I go to Martinsville High School, and I plan on going to Virginia Tech in the fall. Besides mainly going for the food, I plan on majoring in math. I decided to choose this topic because I wanted to do something that involved our community. Inviting a roundabout which would be something new and different to our area since there are none around here. And also, I generally found this topic interesting because I hate waiting at lights. So, according to the Virginia Department of Transportation, a roundabout is basically defined as a circular junction involving yielding to traffic already in a circle. And the first ever roundabout was made in Peterborough, Great Britain in 1968. Some implementing challenges of roundabouts are things like modernizing infrastructure, finances, and pedestrian traffic. Roundabouts are known ways to fix traffic congestion. According to a study done by SHIM in 2022, roundabouts were known ways to fix road utilization, which is referred to the degree of which road is used relative to that road's capacity. Also, widening roads can help minimize peak period traffic congestions. And general link functionality, so the more links there are to a road, the less congestion there are since cars are constantly moving. According to a study done by U-States in 2023, roundabouts had around 8 different conflict points with a 90% fatal crash reduction, while a four-way intersection had 32 conflict points with an 80% fatal crash reduction. These numbers, in general, are just specific for this study, but in general circumstances, roundabouts usually have significantly less conflict points compared to other intersection types. According to a study done by ON, ICEVs, which are internal combustion engine vehicles, were compared to BEVs, which are battery electric vehicles, and they found that BEVs were much more energy efficient compared to ICEVs. According to UStace in 2023, they found that roundabout stop and go issues generally reduce the amount of fuel, meaning you're not, fuel consumption, meaning that you're not sitting there waiting at a light for a super long period of time and burning gas and having to spend money on it. Also, the more directional changes there are in road, the greater the weight will be, which could also contribute to fuel consumption. This all then leads me to my research question, which is how does the waiting time at a 5-way intersection compare to a single lane roundabout? The materials that I use are first Excel data sheets in order to organize my data. Then I use the camera in order to record traffic, and I use a stopwatch to record the arrival and departure times of cars. So I set up multiple observation points, those being on Hooker Street, Berry Street, and Commonwealth Boulevard. I then recorded this data both digitally and manually. In this picture, I am recording that data manually. And I decided to do this during peak traffic hours so that I'd have a better idea of how long cars were generally waiting at lights, and yeah. Also, I had a sample size of around 40 cars, and informed consent was not needed from drivers since it is a public road and you can record traffic. So, I'll be comparing my mean to an already existing claim. And my null hypothesis is basically my initial claim, which is M1 standing for the 5-way intersection is equal to the 84.1, which is what your single lane roundabout would be. And basically this is just saying that there's no real difference between the two. And my alternative hypothesis is what I'm trying to prove, and that is that the waiting time at a 5-way intersection is much greater compared to a single lane roundabout. So looking at my chart, along the x-axis is the waiting times in a certain interval of time, and the y-axis is my frequency, or in other words, how many cars were waiting generally at waiting however long. And I had an average waiting time of around 67.7 with a standard deviation of 39.3. The standard deviation is basically how far my data generally deviated from that 67.7 for the mean. Since I'm comparing my data to an already existing claim, I decided to run a one simple t-test. I ran it so I'm 95% confident, meaning that I wanted to be 95% confident that my results would be true, and the alpha level at 0.05, which was my margin of error. So the t-value tells you how different the average waiting time at an intersection is compared to what we expected. And my t-value came out to be negative 2.633, which basically is just saying that the value that I did get for the 5-way intersection was less than what was expected for the waiting time. And then my p-value is basically my probability number, and it ended up being 0.994. Because my p-value was significantly greater than our margin of error, which was the alpha level of 0.05, I failed to reject my null hypothesis, meaning I don't have enough sufficient evidence to prove that the waiting time at a 5-way intersection was much greater compared to a single lane roundabout. This likely turned out this way because of other factors, likely having to deal with sample size and the practical significance when assessing this data. Also, it's important for road constructors to look into waiting times when they are building any sort of kind of road that there is. So some limitations that I had were things like my sample size. If I had a much bigger sample size, my results would have likely yielded differently. There are also variables I couldn't control. I couldn't control how people drove. I couldn't control like what the speed limit was. Also, there could have been potential outliers that could have skewed my data. And then also, because there was no roundabouts around here, I really didn't have something sufficient to compare my own data to. I feel that future researchers should conduct this on a much larger scale, so they could look at crash rates and traffic flow. Some more variables that they could have looked at were things like weather and again speed limit. And then also not just focusing on one road, but focusing on different types of roads like four-way stop intersections, maybe or T intersections, to see how long people are waiting at those. I would like to thank Ms. Spencer for helping me with my presentation. I would like to thank Ms. Whitaker for helping me with my math portion. And I would like to thank the judges and audience for coming out tonight. I will now take questions.
So if you were able to put a roundabout in Martinsville, Henry County, where would be the most beneficial place that you would say?
Well, I can think of 3 different areas. So for one, over where Starbucks and Chick-fil-A is, there could definitely be an intersection put there, since there are a lot of tractor trailers coming through that way. And when they are making, that super sharp narrow turn, that super sharp left narrow turn, sometimes like drivers, they don't like pull up close enough to the, they pull up really close to the light. So when the tractor trailers are making that left turn, they'll like end up on the sidewalk trying to make the turn. So I feel like that'd be a good place to put around the park.
First of all, I want to say you picked a great place to be a math major. I like to take one. But secondly, a really controversial question in Martinsville lately. Do you think that we should have kept the stoplights or gone to the stop signs in all of the uptown Martinsville intersections?
Just in general, Martinsville drivers don't know how to drive. I'm just saying. I feel like it probably wouldn't even make a difference.
Besides time, the other question often comes up is cost. How cost efficient are roundabouts?
I haven't looked into how much money it would take to build a roundabout, but I would guess it'd be a lot of money. Yeah.
Thank you, Leah. And last up tonight, we have Dakota.
Hi, my name is Dakota Carter, and today I'll be ending our SRP night by talking about the effects of natural skincare on acne. So a little bit about me. I attend Magna Vista High School, and after I graduate, I will attend Radford Carillion University, where I will become a nursing major, where one day I will become a nurse practitioner in pediatrics. So why I chose this project, I think this can really benefit the community because a lot of people don't actually do their own skincare nowadays. And there are lots of benefits of doing skincare, but sometimes people overdo it. For example, the Sephora kids, they have been getting third-degree burns by not knowing the difference between retinol, and tretinoin. And I think more people should be knowledgeable about skincare and how it can actually help them. And I think that more research should go into skincare. So tea tree oil is primarily composed of psyllic monoterpenes with active component terpene 4-OL, which gives it antibacterial and antimicrobial effects. and it is used in various applications such as face washes, creams, lotions, and masks. And a study by Siempre found that tea tree oil was more effective in destroying acne than that of zinc acetate. And this leads me to my next point of zinc. Zinc is a naturally occurring earth element in the crust that plays essential roles in enzyme activity, insulin storage, and oxygen transportation in both humans and plants. And it has been used in both creams, lotions, and masks because of its UV radiation absorbing qualities, its wrinkle reducing effect, and how it's been able to moisturize people's skin. So a study by Yi found that people with lower zinc levels were more prone to experience acne than people who did not have higher zinc in their system. But another study found by Lee found that zinc can be enhanced when combined with erythricin, where they did a study where they compared zinc acetate with and without erythricin, and they found that when they add the erythricin to zinc, it was actually more able to destroy the acne than without it. So you see a picture of a snail and you probably wonder, why is there a snail on skincare? So like my teacher, Miss Spencer, once asked me, why would I want to put snail mucin on my face? Well, snail mucin, also known as snail filtrate, is a gel-like secretion that is produced by snails. It has various active components of proteins, amino acids, enzymes, and vitamins, which gives it its nourishing and moisturizing effects. It has gained popularity for its historical usage and dermatological effects, and it is mostly used in its essence forms like COSRX snail mucin essence, but it's also in face masks and face washes and lotions, as it has been able to show that it can increase the skin's barrier, the moisture level, and it can also decrease the level of acne. So a study by Yi found that snail mucin was actually able to increase the skin's barrier production as the microbiome was increased, as it decreased the level of bacteria that was able to go into your skin's pores, and it was able to increase the hydration level by more than 55%. So honey contains sugars, proteins, amino acids, enzymes, minerals, and organic acids, also with phytocompounds, which gives it antibacterial, antifungal, and antimicrobial effects. And so in skincare, honey has been used for centuries, dating all the way back to ancient Egypt, ancient China, and all across America. And it can be used for different types of diseases such as oral candidinitis, molluscum candinosum, tinea, and acne. And so a study by Siempre found that when honey was compared to that of a normal acne cleanser, it did have some limitations because honey wasn't as able to destroy the acne as the acne serum cleanser, but it was able to destroy it somewhat, just not as powerful. So it does show that it was adjunct to it, which has some limitations. And so all this research leads me to my question of comparing tea tree oil, zinc, snail mucin, and honey to find the best acne cleanser solution. So for my experiment, I gathered all 4 of my serums in my control group of water. I have gathered 120 petri dishes, and I gathered my bacteria with the Staphylococcus, which is a commonly known acne-causing bacteria in the skin's microbiome. And then I labeled all 120 of my petri dishes with my name, the name of the bacteria, and a number from 1 to 120. And then I randomized all these groups. So each group was randomly chosen to where they would be chosen, as shown here. They were all laid out in their chosen group. And each one was chosen randomly by a calculator. And so that's how I perform my simple random sample. And here, as I mentioned before, here's a list of the numbers that were generated by my calculator to ensure there was no bias in which serum and which dishes were chosen for each group. And again, they were all grouped based on where they were chosen. And so then I incubated them all for a 24-hour period. And then after they incubated, I took all the 120 petri dishes out and I measured the zone of beneficiation, which is a circular zone around the center of the petri dish. And it's not the clearest, but it's very faint, and it shows that if the serum was able to inhibit or increase the growth of bacteria. And after I measured all my data, I incorporated this into an Excel spreadsheet. And so for my results, I've made sure to put all my serums into my calculator to see if they follow the normal distribution. Now, as you can see, honey did follow some of it, but I did have one outlier that skewed my data slightly, but it didn't have a big impact. And zinc was completely perfect on the distribution level because it did not have any effect on the bacterial inhibition. Snail mucin did have a lot of outliers, but it did stay mainly equal on the normal curve. T-terol, however, did have the most distribution on the bacterial's inhibition. And water, just like zinc, didn't have any effect on the growth of the bacteria. And so for my null hypothesis, which is normally accepted by the community, is that all my serums and my control group were equal. And for my null hypothesis, which is what I'm trying to prove, is that there's a difference between all 5 of them. And I ran this at an alpha level of 0.05, which means I am 95% confident in my results. And so for my test statistics, I found mean and standard deviation. And as you can see, T-terol and honey had the highest mean averages of destroying the bacteria. And the standard deviation showed is just how much that is the differences between them, how far away they were from 0, and how much they were able to destroy the bacteria. And so I got a p-value of basically 0, which also leads me to believe I will reject my null hypothesis in the future. And I also got F statistic of 17, which is very big, which means there is a variation between all 5 of my samples. And here I did a line graph, which is how I'm able to distribute my data, and all the stars represent the mean averages for each of them. And because of all this, I was able to reject my null hypothesis. But because I rejected my null hypothesis, I had to run a Tukey's HSD, which stands for honestly significant difference, where I will find where the difference lies between all 5 of my groups. And for my HSD value, I got 0.18, and this is the value I will be seeing if any of my values are higher or lower than this. So after that, I subtracted all the means from each other, and I was able to find that both honey and T-terol were both higher than the HSD value, which showed that that's where the honestly significant difference did lie. So for my analysis, I saw that all the skincare had different effects on the bacteria growth. Bacteria growth was very different and skewed between all the samples. Not all of them were the same, and I assumed that the T-terol would have the biggest effect because it does have a higher pH level, which means it's more acidic in destroying the bacteria. But I did find that it wasn't able to destroy it the whole time. But because of that, I was also able to see that T-terol and honey were the most productive in destroying the bacteria. So for my limitations, I only use 1 bacteria sample, and future researchers should include multiple different bacteria because there are multiple different diseases in the skin that can cause acne levels. In my skincare samples, I only use 4 known natural skincare samples, but there are multiple other ones like sulfur, which is commonly found in the Earth's crust, which I think other researchers should include. My Petri dishes, I only had 120 because I forgot about my control group when I first started my study. So I wasn't able to be considered statistically significant for this. And there was air bacteria that could have contributed to the bacteria's growth or inhibition. I would like to show appreciation to Ms. Spencer for helping me create this project. I would like to show appreciation to Ms. Dillon for allowing me to use her skincare and for using the Petri dishes. I'd like to show appreciation to Ms. Harrell for helping me with my statistics, and for the judges in the audience for coming out today and listening to me talk about skincare. I will now take questions from the judges.
Okay, do you think you would have seen a difference in your results if instead of using each of the skincare, like the tea tree oil and the honey separately, if you combined them together?
So in my research, like with zinc, that's why they combined it, because they wanted to see if there was going to be a difference in effect. And honestly, if you combine different skincare samples, you don't know, because like they say, you are not supposed to combine retinol and retinols because they're so highly acidic on the skin level that it could actually burn your skin and just destroy it when you're actually trying to help it. So combining them can be good as long as you know they're not going to inversely react with one another.
Did you, in your research, change your own skincare routine based on what you found?
No, I did not, because my skincare, I worked very long and hard on my skincare, and I've had help from many of my peers who who told me that I should stick with Korean skincare, and I did not include that because I'm trying to gatekeep that for myself and my friends, so I kept that the same.
Do you think the results would have been any different if you would have used, for your control group, you would have actually used human subjects or people who actually had acne?
So I was going to do that originally, but I didn't want to get sued by the people for destroying their skin, and I didn't want to include people. That's a lot of work. So I just decided to stay with water because, you know, it's neutral and it doesn't hurt anybody.
The one night I forgot to give my I'm a crier warning. Let's clap for them one more time. So, that means all of, whew. I warned them, they're prepared for this. Y'all think I'm crazy. All my senior babies are done. I love you guys. I'm so proud of you. And I hope you all are proud of them. And please go celebrate with them. I love you guys. Good job. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, judges. The end.